Hey, everybody. Good morning. We are trying an early morning live session, so hope this works. And I've had a lot of questions coming in now about MicroStrategy and dilution and Bitcoin and what's a better investment. And I'm just going to preface this by really talking about a couple of things. First of all, let me make sure that you guys can see this camera. Yeah, let me see. Kill this and go. Yeah, perfect. Give me 1 second to get that right camera set up. First of all, I have 4 degrees. One of them is a master's in finance from Wharton Business School. And I've never seen anything like this type of financial capital market engineering. This is stuff you don't learn in school, but this is stuff that you definitely learn from Michael Saylor. So, as usual, I'm just going to jump right in and talk about math, money, and freedom. I'm going to talk about what's a better investment. Basically, maybe move this to the side. Am I in the right place? MicroStrategy or Bitcoin? And let's just take it from there. So, first of all, um, I have some models in this, and none of this is investment advice. But the most important thing about the model that I built to calculate is all models are approximations. I had to make some assumptions here. I had to make some assumptions that's the average price that MicroStrategy will be buying Bitcoin for, and also assumptions about the amount of shares they have to issue and the dilution factors. But before we do that, let's switch gears for a second and talk a little bit about the biggest Bitcoin publicly traded companies. And this is my latest spreadsheet that talks about all the top players that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Obviously, the 800-pound gorilla is MicroStrategy, but you've got Tesla. But when you look at Tesla, you dial into exactly how much Bitcoin they have. It's actually very, very small. It's far less than 1%. It's about 0.3%. But then the other players that are of note is Hut 8 Mining, which I'm a big fan of. They're about 26% Bitcoin. And then you've got Voyager Digital, Canadian company that many of you are asked me to look into. They are at nearly 21%. And the rest of the stuff is kind of growing. Other holdings that I have, I own MicroStrategy, I own Tesla, I own Square, I own Galaxy, I own Coinbase, I own Hut 8. And that's it from that list. But you can see there are some interesting names there. Now, in other things, I want to just go through a little bit of history as to all of the different Bitcoin purchases that MicroStrategy have made. I'm just trying to get access to my keyboard. So on this slide here, I charted out when they purchased and at what price they purchased Bitcoin. So back in August 2020, they spent their first tranche of money, $250 million, and they bought a lot of Bitcoin because you could buy Bitcoin for 9, 10 grand. And then the Bitcoin price actually fell in September a little bit, and they spent another $175 million. And then in December, they spent $50 million, which was loose cash they had. And then they did a fundraise for $650 million. And then they dropped 10 million in January, another 10 million in Feb. And, they weren't exactly buying the dips, but sort of. Then they planned to raise another 500 million, and it ended up being $1.05 billion. And you can see the amount there is 1.026 million, because about $24 million is fees for the exchanges to actually buy the Bitcoin. Then they spent another 15 million, another 10 million, another 15 million, another 15 million, another 15 million, another 10 million. And here we are today. Now, what's important to know about this is they've spent a lot of money. They have a lot of Bitcoin, 92,073, I think, to this point. But I'm going to talk now about exactly what they did next. So before we go back, I just want a little bit of history for you all. Citibank, back in December 2020, MicroStrategy was at $290. I jumped in hard. It was one of my first ever YouTube videos, and I saw this huge opportunity to do a synthetic long, basically sell a put, buy a call on MicroStrategy. It's little trade. It ended up doing very, very well. It didn't cost me anything, but I saw the opportunity. But at the same time, Citibank immediately jumped in and downgraded MicroStrategy as a sell. It's just, it flabbergasts me how behind the times these big banks are. Imagine being a customer of Citibank Investment Management Unit and you trust them and all of a sudden they're saying, oh, sell this. A lot of people probably sold or didn't buy or didn't take this opportunity in hand. And again, that breaks my heart. So let's go a little bit further. Let's talk about the chart today. Now, MicroStrategy has done extremely well over the last few days, but it was beaten down hard. So if we go back in history to December, it was at 290 bucks. That's when I got in, and it went all the way up to 1300. That squeeze there was obviously a big short squeeze, and it was a great time to sell if you got out. I actually have held my positions like I hold Bitcoin because I think there's a bigger end game for MicroStrategy. So I did not sell anything. In fact, I accumulated at 540 and then again a little bit later on the dip. So I'm buying the dips on MicroStrategy. Now, I know a few of you got some at a really good price very recently. It went down to 430. Today it's at 630. It was at 430 bucks just a week ago, which is a great time to enter. So this stock went up 50% in 1 week. So I just want to share that with you all. Now, these are the plans going forward. I had a lot of questions regarding, what happens with liquidation and what happens with the junk bond issuance, etc. So I'm going to break that all down for you today. So first of all, they have raised 500 million from the junk bond issuance. That should bring in about an additional 12,000 Bitcoin. And they are going to issue stock for about $1 billion, which I think will bring in another 22,000 Bitcoin. But I'll walk you through everything else like that. So per my math, there will never be more than 14 million Bitcoin will ever exist because so much is lost in the Satoshi lockup, etc. And I believe MicroStrategy will have 0.9% of all that Bitcoin after these two financial jujitsu moves. Now, I always said for months and months, Michael Saylor's plan is to have 1% of all Bitcoin, and he's getting very close to that goal. So let's talk very quickly about what they did. And if anybody out there is a CFO of a company or anything else, this is literally financial jujitsu. So first of all, the first bet, 425 million in cash, very straightforward, pulled it from the balance sheet, invested in Bitcoin, and the rest is history. All the other purchases of $10 and $15 million I walk you through were all from free cash flow. The second big bet was 650 million purchases funded by a capital raise, offering a 0.75% convertible senior notes due in 2025. So basically, should Bitcoin go to zero, the company is stuck with this debt. That's not good news. But pulling in 50 million cash a year, they can easily pay this off if they need it. So that didn't have any impact on the financials. And I know a lot of you concerned about, what does all this borrowing mean for the actual company? But because they're investing in something like Bitcoin, it's not a big problem. And also because their cost basis is about 24,000, also not a big problem. So here you can see that the conversion rate for these notes is about 2.5 shares per $1,000 of debt. And that's a conversion price of $397. So we're at 430 last week. The price wasn't too far from that price. And this translates into a dilution of 1.63 million shares on top of the 9.62 million shares outstanding today. But that's happening in the future in 2025. I think I'll be long out of this trade by then. So I'm not concerned what happens in 2025 or 2027. So I want you all to be aware of that. Maybe I will be, I'm not sure, but most probably not. And so what that means, that dilution in the year 2025 is about a dilution factor of about $47, which is not a big deal. It's not a hill of beans. If you look at the stock adding 200 bucks in a week, $47 over 5 years, not a big concern. Okay, the third bet is 1.05 billion raise convertible for cash at a 50% premium, no interest rate. This is unbelievable. And this conversion isn't going to happen until 2027. So again, don't be concerned about that dilution either. Long way into the future. Again, 7 years. But borrowing that amount at 0% is crazy. So the fourth bet is $600 million senior notes secured by 2028 with annual interest of 6.125%. Because such a high rate, people call this junk bonds. I know some people don't like that term, but that's what they are. And they'll be able to buy 12,000 Bitcoin with this. Now, the fifth bet is $1 billion of stock to be issued. Now, this is important. So the number of shares, I reckon, will be about 1.587 million shares to raise that much money. And over the 9.62 million shares that exist today, that's a 16% dilution. But remember, from a risk perspective, the money's going to buy Bitcoin. And note, Bitcoin has gone up 31% in 5 days, and MicroStrategy has gone up 50% in 5 trading days. And the total number of Bitcoin after this fifth bet is 128,000. So I hope you're all tracking with me here as to where we are. Now, let's look at my price prediction model, and we're going to go in here. And here you can see I've built out in great detail all of the transactions based on future Bitcoin prices. So the key message here, number one, is I added my estimate of dilution and did not take into account the 2027 dilution, as I'll be out of my trade, but then, like I mentioned. Number two, the new number of shares are about 11.2 million. Again, this could be slightly different. It depends what they issue the shares at what price to raise that $1 billion. The higher MicroStrategy goes, the less shares they need to issue. So it's good. And the new Bitcoin holding will be about $128,000. And these are my price scenarios where I see Bitcoin going and where I see the price of MicroStrategy going, taking into account the new number of shares, and I reduce the net cap, which is the intrinsic value of the business, which was 1.2 billion. I move that down to $1 billion. So if Bitcoin goes to $60,000, the theoretical floor price for MicroStrategy would be $775. If it goes to $80,000, MicroStrategy will be worth $1,004. If it goes to $100,000, which I believe it will by the end of this year at the very least, MicroStrategy will go to $1,232. So $108,000, which is my target, is $1,324. $150,000, $1,800. $200,000 is $2,375. $500,000, MicroStrategy goes to $6,000. And $1 million, MicroStrategy goes to nearly $12,000. Now, what that means is basically a $1 million Bitcoin would put MicroStrategy up 1,800% from today. And it's an on-ramp that most hedge funds and investors don't have. So I expect it to have a very juicy premium as time goes forward. And you can already see that happening now with people investing. So there are a couple of things I just want to point out to everybody as well is the Bitcoin risks. If this is for everybody who owns Bitcoin, not just for MicroStrategy, but if there's a security breach or cyber attack or if private keys are lost or destroyed, MicroStrategy could lose some or all of their Bitcoin. And this same goes for you that hold Bitcoin and self-custody. So beware of that risk. And the concentration of Bitcoin holdings enhances the risks inherent in their Bitcoin acquisition strategy, which is they have all their eggs literally in one basket. And the Bitcoin holdings are less liquid than cash. So you can't just turn them into cash at the flip of a switch, although it is getting more and more liquid. But if you're moving large amounts, it can be a little more problematic. And Bitcoin holdings could subject MicroStrategy to regulatory scrutiny from the government. So that's kind of just some of the risks that I see that you're all supposed to be aware of. So quick conclusion as to this one. First of all, the most important part is always the conclusion of my videos. As I mentioned, $1 million Bitcoin by 2030 would put MicroStrategy at nearly $12,000. And this doesn't include premium. And this is the on-ramp that most don't have. So when the hedge funds start loading up, as we saw from Paul Tudor Jones, 5% into Bitcoin, etc., it's crazy. I'm going to step out for a second. That 5% recommendation by Paul Tudor Jones is a game changer. Can you imagine all of the money, all of the savings, all the hundreds of trillions of dollars, and he's saying, smartest investor in the world, put 5% into Bitcoin? So the money has to flow. But many, many funds legally cannot buy things like Bitcoin directly. So they have to buy proxies like GBTC, like MicroStrategy. And again, as always, do your own risk. And I am long MicroStrategy and very, very bullish on it. And a big thank you to Patreon, especially for these questions many of you asked. And I hope you like it. So what I'm going to do is turn this off for a second and just, again, talk about this financial jujitsu move. And the easy way to frame this up is in the most recent situation. Michael Saylor is borrowing at, say, 6.5% per year on an asset that goes up 200% per year. So the question is, over the next 7 years, do you think MicroStrategy will go up more than 6.5% per year or less? please leave a comment below. So I'm going to open this up to Q&A, and then we can talk. If there are any questions regarding this or other matters, let me just go into the YouTube chat, find out what's going on. Give me a second. Let me pop this. Where is the chat? Hang on a second. It always takes me a minute to pull it up and see what questions you guys all have. Here we go. I said the same thing, here we go, twice. And I found the chat at last. To save bandwidth, I turn off all my applications so nothing happens. So let me see what's going on. Any quick questions for anybody? Did I miss any super questions? Can you look up the Quant network, please, from Nikhil Singh? I've never heard of the Quant network, so BMBM, thank you for that. Quant network. So when I see people desperate for me to look at something, it raises a red flag. So never heard of it. Probably a rug pull. Be very careful, everybody out there, of stuff like that. Okay. BTC dumping, was it a bull trap? I wouldn't call it dumping. I mean, for a $40,000 asset to fall $800 or $900, not a big deal. Remember yesterday, it spiked to 41,400, went straight up. Oh, it is. Let me see. Yeah, 39,700. This type of stuff happens all the time. You know, it is a volatile beast. Again, always remember as well, when you have an asset that goes up 200% a year, of course there's going to be big violent swings. But that's why I always say wear your seatbelt. So Mary C, MD. Hi, Mary, the doctor. Thank you for taking care of people keeping healthy. Question is GBTC versus MicroStrategy. That's a brilliant question. So Michael Saylor basically is in a position to do some of the most incredible financial engineering jujitsu. Like I've just walked through those 5 or 6 different fundraising methods. An ETF can't do that. And GBTC isn't even an ETF yet. I do believe GBTC is worth holding on to or buying because it's still at a 12% discount, 14% last time I did my calculations yesterday. But at the same time, MicroStrategy has options available. You can buy it on margin, and that can help you manage your risk. That's why I prefer MicroStrategy as a proxy to GBTC, because I can play with options. I can sell puts, I can buy calls, I can sell out of the money calls against my long positions and manage my risk and generate a lot of cash flow at the same time. So I prefer personally MicroStrategy, but if you are not an options trader, you might be safer holding on to GBTC with a little bit of MicroStrategy. And what happens as well is MicroStrategy is so volatile, sometimes it gets completely oversold, completely beaten down. So let's see what happens. Mr. G, thank you so much. Do you see Ethereum following Bitcoin when prices rise? Yes, there's a little bit of FUD out there now regarding Ethereum and the fact that they might be delaying EIP 1559, or what they call London, in July. So we'll see where it goes. I would rather them delay things and get it right than rush things out the door. But yeah, I still see a lot of money going into Bitcoin first, Ethereum second. The Ethereum price now, again, it's hovering around that $2,400 range, gets beaten down. I do like Ethereum anywhere around 2,300, 2,250. So if it does dip to that level, I am a buyer. So big thank you for that question. And a cat just walked into the room. That's funny. I didn't think the cat knew where I was. Let me see what other questions. Thoughts on XRP? I don't like XRP because they have literally $51 billion of tokens in escrow that could be dumped at any time. So it's riskier. I think there's much safer plays, much more value to be had beyond that. And there's a lot of companies going after XRP's lunch, just like I discussed recently with Zilliqa. Zilliqa could be a formidable competitor to XRP as well. So MicroStrategy entry price from First Coast Crypto. Whoop. This is incredible. Sorry. I don't know if you guys can see, but a cat just jumped on. This is teeny. Cat just jumped onto my keyboard. Nope, stay on there. Never happened before. So MicroStrategy entry price Uh, what's really frustrating. I get all these questions all the time from people about, oh, when to buy. Like you could have got MicroStrategy at $430 a week ago, and now it's $632. So it's gone up $200. I like personally. I think MicroStrategy is a great deal at 540 or below. Not investment advice, but that's where I accumulate. Even $500 if it goes down that far. But now with Bitcoin and the momentum and El Salvador and all the other truckload of great news that's happening at the same time, it's insane. So thank you. Leia Rich, question from you. Have you looked into yield farming? Yes. Any thoughts? I love your cat. So this is an adopted cat who was found homeless in the streets with a bunch of kittens, and nobody wanted the mom, so we took her in. Um, Yield farming, I don't see, for me, and I understand how yield farming can work, but when I see things like 30%, 48% return, I get very suspicious because when the return's so high, it makes me worry very much about the counterparty risk. I am making more than enough money investing in my cryptos and holding them and getting out at certain positions than I need to make a 6 or 10 or 20% APY. But once things settle down and once prices of crypto stabilize, I will definitely be doing things like staking, yield farming, borrowing against my crypto, all that stuff. But right now, I don't need to, and I don't want to take on the risk. And as you know, there is a lot of risk with some of the exchanges these days. Cali Caligvia 71. Thank you. What are the risks of the California exodus? We have more people collecting some type of government check than earning in the private sector. 1031 at risk. Yeah, there's a lot of talk of states like New York and California having a lot of problems. Obviously, their taxes are so high and their taxes are going higher. Um, Real estate, however, somebody said to me, yes, California is expensive, but it's expensive for a reason. It's like the same reason people go to Hawaii or Bora Bora because it's beautiful. If you go to a place like Marin or San Francisco, Tahoe, they're all expensive places and they're beautiful. But if you move to, I don't know, somewhere, I don't want to mention any other places, but there's a price to pay for living in expensive places. I am in the real estate market in California. I haven't seen rental prices come down that much. In fact, prices of houses have not come down at all, believe it or not. So, and the 1031 risk, it is at risk. A lot of times the government proposes tax, closing tax loopholes and increasing tax rates, but at the end of the day, they'll never pass in the Senate because, again, the politicians are funded by high net worth individuals and they can't afford to do that. So we'll see what happens. I hope California figures some stuff out because they are leaving a lot of people in the dry. So Dylan O'Reilly, I live in Tahoe. Nice. I'll never move away. I pay the price to be happy. Exactly. That's the point. It's like you can stay in a Motel 6 for $49 a night, or you can stay in a luxury hotel for $500 a night. It just depends on what you want. Favorite Hawaiian island? I think for all round pleasure, this is from Kevin Collins. I like Maui because I like the surfing there. But for pure peace, there's a couple of other places I like as well. So Sanjay Suvesta, yes, James, buyer of Tesla and Google here. I shorted Google at 2,500, but I own Google at 1,000. I think Google will go from strength to strength as the economy returns. I'm looking to cover the if Google shoots above $2,500, I'll buy those calls back. I'm still kind of in the money because time value is depreciating. Tesla under 600. That's hard to say. I again, believe it or not, it's kind of funny. The number 540 for both Tesla and for MicroStrategy are good entry points. I would wait a little bit for Tesla to fall. I think Tesla has a huge future. In fact, it's kind of coincidental. My MicroStrategy position and my Tesla position are about the same size, but I believe my MicroStrategy position will grow faster because Tesla will too. I, again, very, very bullish on Tesla despite all of the Elon stuff. I think he's coming around. He's discovered what it's like to be unpopular on Twitter, and now he's going to be more cautious with his words. And Tesla have so much goodness coming down the pike, especially for energy storage. They can't make energy storage batteries fast enough. The demand is through the roof. You've got countries like Israel. You've got campuses like the Apple campus. You got states like Texas that want to leverage their technology and equipment, and they just can't build it fast enough. So super bullish on Tesla. Plus, they've increased the price of their cars because they can. So the margin's going to go up in their vehicles. So we'll see what happens. John, thank you so much. What price implications do you anticipate with the July ETH options? I haven't. I've been focusing much more on the Bitcoin options, not the July ETH options, and I need to check on that and find out where they are. I know there's been a big move towards people shorting stuff, but they're buying very out of the money positions for very small pennies, and they're probably trying to do the same thing with Ethereum. Again, Ethereum has a lot of open question marks, especially with the delay and everything else, but they are still the de facto standard out there in the marketplace. So we'll see what happens. There's another person saying, I'm going to hide when people are pumping stuff like Ajax and weird stuff. Just be very careful what you see out there. We'll see. But yeah, Ethereum, I will look into that, John, and figure out what's going on, and I'll address that in tomorrow's segment. So thank you. Eric Livo, sell Tesla and go MicroStrategy. No, I like to hold both for different reasons. The way things work in the marketplace is things happen in cycles. It's a very good question. So sometimes each dog has its day is the old expression, but there are times when MicroStrategy will be super hot, especially when Bitcoin rebounds, and there are times when Tesla will be super hot. Tesla just need a barrage of good news to drop, and then we'll see what happens going from there. So I would hold both. And ADA versus Algo. I like Algorand a lot, and it's so funny because when I look at Cardano and I look at players that are already up and running with smart contracts like Zilliqa and Solana and stuff like that, I get more and more bullish in some of the up and coming players than I do on Cardano. But we'll see what happens. I have a position in Cardano, but my Solana position is much bigger right now. And my Algorand position is about the same size as my Cardano position. So that's how I'm hedging my bets. But remember, I think my altcoins are about 6% now of my crypto portfolio, but I'm still heavy 60-40 Bitcoin, Ethereum. And especially as Bitcoin dominance rises and Ethereum stays flat, then you'll see that my weighting of Bitcoin will go back to 65-35. So Caligvia 71 again. Thank you. Cat Fund donation. Also, pay off low interest balance transfer credit union debt under 2% or buy Bitcoin 25% to deploy. That's a good question. So if you have a long-term fixed interest rate at your balance transfer credit card debt, so for example, if you can hold it for 12 months at that rate, hold the debt and buy Bitcoin. And that's what I would do. I'd never say, if you can afford, if a rainy day does happen and you do have the ability to pay that debt back, do that. Make sure you are in that position. Otherwise, borrow as much as you can. I do. And that's what I reckon, especially at 2%, because, Bitcoin's going to 100 grand within the next 12 months. So that's just what's happening. Maybe even a lot more. So, John, yes, Solana. We'll see what happens. So cool. I'll take one more question and then I got to bounce. Heading to San Francisco today. Let me see. Is there a point, this is from Jason Smith, is there a point where Bitcoin to MicroStrategy premium becomes high enough that it's worth selling MicroStrategy and re-entering at a lower price? Yes, that can happen all the time, Jason. That's a great question. So when you have, if you imagine people like Michael Burry shorting things like MicroStrategy, not that he does, but if he did, it could put him in a short squeeze situation. At the same time, big hedge funds and other players come in to buy MicroStrategy. That can create that squeeze effect like we had a few months back where MicroStrategy went to $1,300. That would be the time that you pull the trigger, you sell, and get back in lower. And again, sometimes there is a big premium, but also sometimes there's a big discount, just like GBTC. So I actually have a model on Patreon that I share that shows you the exact arbitrage opportunity for MicroStrategy, depending on the true intrinsic value versus where it trades at today. So I hope this is helpful, everybody. Okay, Hayes, REITs versus crypto real estate coins. I haven't looked into crypto real estate coins. They sound a little bit suspicious, a little early for that yet. And REITs, if they are commercial REITs, I wouldn't touch them right now. I think the world is changing. It's going to be less office space utilized. So we'll see what happens. Uh, cool. Okay, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining. This is earlier than normal. I wanted to see how it goes. A lot of times, some of the people in Eastern Europe and other parts of the world can't see my afternoon Pacific time events, so we're just seeing what it's like to go a little bit earlier. So, big thank you everybody for joining, and I'll see you all later. Maybe later today if I get a chance to do one. Thanks all. Bye.